evening sky. To whom do these celestial steeds belong? When you appear to us like gods on high, what brings you here to mystify?
Welcome to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. I am Kate Valentine, and I'm here with you this and every Friday at 1. Now today we're privileged to have back as our guest Matt Lyons. Matt is the president of the British UFO Research Association. UFOs are indeed an international phenomenon, and it's going to be interesting to see how, if at all, the British approach differs from ours. So, welcome to the show, Matt. There's certainly big doings tonight in London. I was thinking it would be a great event for a UFO flyover to appear. That'd be terrific, wouldn't it?
Hi, Kate. Yes, it would be, as indicated by a slight hint by Nick Pope, that there might be something over that broke over in the newspapers here that it's hints of an invasion, but I don't know where his sources came from or whether that was just a bit of speculation.
Yeah.
And I look forward to that. We're watching the skies, but it's interesting to note that in the build-up to that, we've got a lot of reports coming in because, of course, the security stepped up, and with that, you've got a lot of aerial phenomena that are coming in that are, to most people in the UK, is sometimes their first sighting of things like drones. You know, the propeller planes with 4 little helicopter rotors that go over and just to sort of check on crowd control and make sure crowds aren't getting too built up in certain areas and traffic flow. And so we've had a few reports from those come in, and also some unmanned aerial craft. So we've been quite busy with the sightings coming in for the Olympics.
I bet you have been, and it'd be great if like an ET showed up for like the high jump or something like that. You know, at least give them equal sort of television time.
Well, we were looking very carefully at certain competitors' names. Obvious giveaways will be Hayley Ann.
Okay.
And so on.
Okay, great. Well, I'll tell you, your government has certainly upped ours one because the National Archives was released on July 12th of this year, and those files, which contain over 6,700 pages of UFO policy, parliamentary questions, public correspondence, and UFO sightings, that must have been quite interesting for your group to have all that to go over. I mean, so are all of those released files new to you, or are some of the big ones sort of old hat like Rendlesham?
Well, in fact, there are some quite nice surprises in there. Some of the cases, quite a lot of the cases we've actually dealt with, especially the most notable one in the recent release was the Welsh Triangle of 1977, which it got the nickname because it had 3 points, 3 towns where there was quite a lot of activity going on. And it was in the build-up also to the release of the Close Encounters, the Spielberg film. That was all building up, and I can even remember as a child reading the comics where they went, all the Marvel comics, where they actually put a whole back page spread in for that movie. And so that one was quite a big UFO flat. And seeing some of the files there, we've got, for example, the school, where lots of children, not just one and say a teacher, but lots of children, including their teacher, actually witnessed a craft land and a being get out in a suit.
What was that like, Matt? Because to be honest with you, I'm a little bit unfamiliar with the sighting or the event that you're speaking about.
It's around the Milford Haven area and around the oil refineries and going up as far as Anglesey, which is in the mid area of Wales, going up to the north. And 3 separate incidents, but each one of them involved a humanoid that emerged from a craft, or in one case it was observed from a hotel. In one separate case it was observed from a hotel, actually with part of a rock opening and a UFO coming out of it.
Really?
Yeah, there was that as well, and it caused so much attention that a book did actually get written by it that pulled all the cases that we investigated separately, called the Welsh Triangle, by a very well-respected researcher called Peter Paget. It's spelled P-A-G-E-T. And although the original book's out of print, you can still get hold of that. And I recommend anybody get a copy for that to see how a UFO flap can actually build. And I think a lot of people rate that as probably, in terms of activity in a very small area of time, as very close to Rendlesham, although they're completely different events and circumstances in terms of hype with the media. And we even had I think the local air base went out and actually met some of the witnesses as well. So obviously it became an MOD file.
Speaking of MOD files, were there any governmental comments on these as to what they thought they were or what the importance of them were? Does the government actually include in their Freedom of Information Type Act some comment on their consideration of these events?
Well, in many cases, the MOD line comes back to no defence significance. They're really interested in whether there's been a violation of airspace, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that they consider extraterrestrial. It almost gets umbrellaed into the same area as just something we don't understand on radar if it comes in, and something anomalous, just in case it's an unwelcome visitor with a terrestrial craft as well, but the public might be misperceiving it as something that is a little bit out of the ordinary, because it might be experimental prototype craft that either the MOD knows about or perhaps from another country.
Well, when these craft landed in this Welsh Triangle and the humanoid creature got out, was there any interaction with the school children that any of them reported?
It was just an observation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they got out, sort of waved hello, got back in and took off again type visit?
Yes, it just basically took off. They basically looked around with the teachers, and the teacher came out. And the third one, well, they actually, that's the other thing to mention, they actually took some drawings for that and sent them in, and the MOD got those as well. And one of the investigators collated those as well, where there are pictures, and all of them are quite consistent. They all tie in together for the age of the primary school drawings you would expect. And so that was quite a multiple witness sighting.
Yeah, and you wonder how these don't get a little bit more public attention. I mean, they do, but I think they get in some of the sort of the tabloid press as opposed to the the more accepted media.
I think that the press did cover it, but it just went into yesterday's newspaper, and it took really Peter Paget. We published these incidents in our journal in the investigations reports, but the author Peter Paget was one that tied it all together into a triangle, and the phrase really got solidified from that novel. And one of our investigators was actually a reverend as well that went out there. The third one, we had the Anglesey UFO that took off, noted by the hotel. There was also the another sighting separately, where a silver-suited person was around in a village, another separate village. But the most striking one was probably one of Ripperston Farm, which was also part of the triangle. That also gets mentioned a little bit in the cases on the file releases progressively. And that was a round flat disc that was observed, whitish in colour, and it moved towards the sea direction, because it's quite near the Welsh coast on the west side. And it was going about 20 miles an hour, and towards a place called Stag Rocks. And a mum was in the car with the 4 children, and they went down to the water's edge, and where they were standing on the headland, sloping down towards the edge of the sea itself, they observed really strange sighting, which was it's separated by a peninsula. And the young farmer's wife described how, as she and her mother approached the sea, they could see 2 men moving about on the rock. The immediate reaction was that they were witnessing 2 skin divers going about their business in the deep water surrounding the rocks. But then they took a closer look, and both women, however, soon realised that the 2 figures had the requisite number of legs, arms and feet. The heads appeared to be very elongated and far larger than the average human head. And Mrs. Coombs, one of the ladies, described the heads as being rectangular in shape, with the corners rounded off. And when it was queried to whether she thought they were skin divers or fishermen, or the difference, she said that they were human in shape, but they were definitely not human beings. And they watched this for about 15 minutes, and then it just all progressed onwards from there. And then suddenly there was a shimmering haze around the doors opening on a craft, and then from that point onwards it sort of they kept on opening and closing, and they saw another silver-clad figure walking up and down as if it was surmounting a series of stairs and then descending again. So this was almost like the set of invisible stairs that you actually get in some science fiction films, but this is an actual real event whereby it seems as if they're walking down from a door and then getting back up into it, the craft. So there you have it. So there was a lot of strange things going on there.
And that's all in the same time period?
All very much in 1977, very tight little time period. It was to counter that as well, to bring this to balance the argument out a little bit. There may have been some sort of refinery work going on, but I find it difficult to believe that all of the sightings can be blamed on this. But in one of the village shops, there was a silver suit that was for sale. How it managed to end up in the shop, I don't know, but it was actually for sale. That was actually oil refinery stand, and it was the sort of suit that you normally would get in an oil refinery for cleaning out and needing to be completely encased to the same standard as a diver would be, to working with cleaning out all of the sludge from tanks and all the cooling systems that work on the inside of them. It was that sort of standard of suit. And we did have somebody, I think it was about a decade or two later, from the village, where it suddenly had disappeared from the shop, and then when the triangle started really getting under full way, he eventually, in long term, owned up to having gone round the village in it, spooking people. So, but how much of that, you've got an independent sighting there of silver suits there that are out towards sea, getting in and out of a UFO, which on a visible staircase leading up to it while it's hovering and doors closing. But also we looked at I spoke to sort of David Clark about this one, and we also looked at the just a week ago, and you have to also look at the belief systems and anything that might be making people worried on TV programs that might sometimes set these things off. And I think the most significant program was Doctor Who, and they had the Robots of Death with Tom Baker in it, just in the middle of all that kicking off. Oh, well, yes, we'll have to get back to that one, too. Kate Valentine here. I'm speaking to Matt Lyons. He is the president of the British UFO Research Association. We're on 1160 WVNJ. If you have questions or comments, you can post your thoughts, your comments, and especially any questions that you have for Matt right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. We need to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Hope to hear from you then. Welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. Today we're privileged to have back as our guest Mr. Matt Lyons. He is the president of the British UFO Research Association, and we'd welcome your participation in this discussion, and you can post your opinions and your thoughts and certainly your questions right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFO.com. It was interesting that you brought up, Matt, the silver suit that was for sale in the shop, and the fellow that put it on and sort of caused small, series of panics in the village, because we had an interesting comment that came in during the week from Freeman, and he was his position was, how sneaky are ETs? Do they know enough about us now where they can imitate
human activity to cover up their activity. And it's sort of an interesting thought. And I think you may have that may have happened with the silver suit.
It could be possible that it's undercover. There's lots of stories of morphing and then suddenly beings disappearing. Seeing somebody by the roadside, and then you double back thinking that they're needing a ride somewhere, and then they suddenly disappear, and yet the area is absolutely completely flat. And sometimes we've had vehicle interference reports that have come in whereby somebody or an entity might be seen, and sometimes followed by red mists and all sorts of weird things like car engines failing, and even down to the effects of the occupants of the car, where the perceptions are completely different. The driver can not even realise sometimes. You can have three different occupants. The driver can black out but not realise that they've got missing time, just thought that they went to sleep for a couple of seconds. The passenger can be absolutely frightened and seen everything that of a strange light may be enveloping the car, and yet the child could be asleep on the back seat and not disturbed by anything, and completely unfazed by the event, and not realised or recalled anything. So I think with a lot of these strange things that happened, there's a lot to be said for human perception and how each individual human can be affected by these events and strange anomalies.
Well, when you're faced with something that's so far out of your day-to-day experience, it really is difficult to make sense of it, and I think most people will try to relate it to something that is in their everyday experience, and so maybe that's the reason for it. But, again, unfortunately, with so many things with UFOs, we just don't know. But, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on this recent government disclosure? Why did they do it? Has it been helpful? Do you think maybe it's just to brush things under the rug, like, oh, well, here, this is what we have, and it's nothing important. You can see that. Do you think they disclosed everything? I mean, what is the general feeling in your group?
Well, David Clark did a lot of work. Dr. David Clark did a lot of work on writing to the MOD and asked over many years for them to be released. Mm-hmm. And they eventually started to. That's what eventually started this phasing through. And his book on the UFO files is available to buy, which summarizes quite a lot of the earlier batches that have come out already in the cases. And really, I think that it is a shame that the MOD desk is closed, just from a point of view of keeping them alerted to anything that could be a UFO that actually is a known or even experimental aircraft, but it's being seen as a UFO, just so they can actually keep that on their data, to keep in the loop of what's flying up there, and also how the public's perception of any experimental craft, for example, like the strange looks of things like drones and unmanned aerial aircraft, which are getting more popular over here for use, in the sky. Being able to file a report with that, the member of the public, if they know that it's been used, they can't maybe disclose the full details of the craft, but they perhaps could have put the public at ease by having the line still open, by saying, well, we can't tell you what it is, but we know for a fact that it's something up there that's flying that we can't disclose the details, but don't worry, it's not from outer space or something like that. So that's a shame, really, that I don't think that was one of the better moves in the cost-cutting measures they did, because it was just one person at any one time in that department that was in the post.
Right. Right. Kate Valentine here. I'm speaking to Matt Lyons. He's the president of the British UFO Research Association. We're on 1160 WVNJ. If you have comments, post them now. Website is AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. I sometimes wonder, though, Matt, certainly the Air Force closed down Project Blue Book, but the feeling here is that they're still collecting an awful lot of data on UFOs and UFOs reports, and most of them go to Peter Davenport with Newfork or George Filer, and there's and of course MUFON. I'm wondering if maybe they closed their desk down, but they're still keeping tabs on yours.
I think probably that they're still getting the news clippings coming in and anything that's in there, but it's just not proactive anymore in terms of having somebody like. I mean, there is still a department that you can contact in the Air Force, part of the MOD, which will still respond to inquiries, but it's really lost the inward number that you can dial into, but you can still contact. But it really has become, I think, a little bit more rigid on it being strictly air significance, basically, security. From point of view, if it's something that's concerned about them being in the airspace. I'm afraid that at the moment, I think the days of Nick Pope, because Nick Pope is able to go out and investigate and meet some of the witnesses, which allowed him to produce some of his material that summarised this time at the MOD, which was for a number of years. But then, as the way that desk works, it works on rotation. It's then very often, sometimes there's a promotion or a change to another department, and then a new person came in. And it's interesting that when you actually look at the MOD files, you can see how different officers have responded in different ways, depending on their remit at the time. So sometimes it's been proactive, but sometimes it's been just the odd letter, back and forth. So it's been very, very. There's been a lot of variation in how the desk has run over the years. But I'm actually pleased that they've released them, obviously, because it also shows that there are also files that are coming back that we've sent into the MOD ourselves to say, look, we've had this report here, and just in case you've missed it, is there anything you'd like to add? But in many cases, it's a bit of a one-way valve.
Well, yeah, but it sort of reflects the general population's attitude as well. Like, some people are quite interested and follow up on it, and a good deal of the population could care less and don't consider it a threat and don't consider it interesting. So it's sort of, that's interesting that the officers going through that particular desk should also echo that feeling.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the most recent files. I think we've got perhaps one more batch left before it's completely closed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there might be another set of files probably that might be the last wave. But it is actually good to see some reports that we haven't seen ever before, that perhaps have been reported directly to the MOD, but we may have had a third witness, say 2 people report it, a third witness has gone to someone like ourselves at BUFORA or another independent researcher, and they've written up the case file on their magazine or their website in more recent years, and then 2 independent reports that were sent to the MOD have tied in to make it a second and a third sighting of the same event. So that's been quite useful.
It is, and unfortunately, I have to echo Leslie Kane's thoughts on this, that we have sightings and sightings and sightings and correlations, but no one's ever been able to really bring all of those sightings to a point, saying, this is it. Now all the data makes sense. It just seems as if it's just all over the place constantly. Something's going on. It's just almost impossible to figure out what it is.
Well, there's been some very, very positive moves with a collection of data. In fact, one of our colleagues, which is AFU in Sweden, and you can have a look at their website at afu.se, and they actually operating and have done for a number of years an archive, which started off mainly in Europe, but has been attracting now worldwide cooperation. And so that all of these groups, sometimes we get a UFO society that was maybe only active between 1960 and 1980 perhaps. And in many cases, a lot of the data's been lost just to getting mouldy in a basement, and the paper degrading, staples rusting. Or in some cases, it might have been a partner, and in fact, this is what actually started Klaas Van, who's the head of AFU, one of the directors of AFU, and it was a case in Sweden whereby I think a researcher who had done about 30, 40 years
Matt,
of research.
We're going to have to take a quick break right now, but let's get back to that right after the break, because
No problem.
that's very interesting. Kate Valentine speaking to Matt Lyons. He is the president of the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA, B-U-F-O-R-A, if you'd like to look that up, on 1160 WVNJ. We'd love to hear your questions, your comments, your thoughts. Post them right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. We'll be right back and hope to hear from you then. Hi, welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. Today our guest is Mr. Matt Lyons, the president of the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA. We welcome you to this discussion, and you can post any of your thoughts and questions right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Just before the break, Matt, you were talking about AFU, and if you could go over that quickly for anyone that just tuned in.
No problem. So AFU is a archive for UFO research, and they've been collecting material from all over the world. It started off in Europe mostly, and it was the inspiration for that was a bit of a sad start, because it was Class got very upset when they were trying to get hold of some UFO files of somebody had been somebody that they knew that had been researching for many decades, and unfortunately the partner didn't realise the significance of it all, thinking, oh well, they've all been investigated, and they all went in, I think, into the skip, went into the garbage, and so they were all lost, and so all that data, a whole life of UFO research, just disappeared into thin air. And so that was a really key moment for him, and he said this can never be allowed to, as far as possible, happen again. And he'd already been active in the UFO.se website, which is that's a website for the UFO group in Sweden, and AFU work in partnership with them, but they're quite a separate organisation in their own right. And we've for example, sent some of our cases there to make sure, and some of our magazines, to make sure that there's a safe place for it, and they're stored in the same conditions that you would normally expect to find in a library that's looking after documents to make sure that they don't degrade over hundreds of years. So they're stored in the right temperature, and in classic library filing systems that you would expect to find in a well-funded museum.
That's good to know. That really is. We had some interesting questions that came into you. Doug has asked, has the number of UFO sightings in Great Britain increased, decreased, or stayed about the same in the past years?
I would say it's on the increase at the moment.
Yeah, here too.
Firstly, because of the International Space Station, especially with the fitting of the new solar panels on it a couple of years ago. And excuse me, that made it the brightest thing in the sky in terms of satellites. And of course, the trajectory that it takes over is so fast, really, compared to more sedate celestial objects, that we get plenty of calls with that it was too fast for a plane, absolutely right, and it was too high up for a plane, absolutely right, and but some people are very, very relieved when they find out that it's not an impending alien invasion. So we're happy to see sort of people out there on that one. The other thing, of course, is the drones, and I know that in the US you've got quite a lot of civil liberty problems with those, because they've got them to the point whereby they're getting better at getting them to fly on solar power for extended durations of flight. And
I think we all have our own individual drones at this point now. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yes, they have really increased in numbers here.
That's it. We're starting to get those. The first one that we actually came in that was to a mass crowd report rather than a separate one was over Stonehenge, and it's not all bad though. I think drones do get a bit of a bad press because of privacy intrusion and so on. But on the you got that argument, but to balance it out, if we look at the Stonehenge sighting, a couple of years ago there was a fantastic picture of one. over Stonehenge just to check that crowds weren't going to get crushed on the summer solstice celebration there. And it appeared above it. The police had started just using them for the first time, just to make sure that there wasn't an imbalance in crowds and too many people in one place. As you know, rock concerts, sometimes you get bad press from somebody getting crushed in a crowd that gets out of control. And so they were just using it to make sure the crowd was balanced around the perimeter, and people were freely moving around the side. But I think it was a History or Discovery program did an excellent feature that I watched recently, which showed that the drones were used by archaeologists on the same site, which discovered the new wooden henge, which was the precursor of Stonehenge, and some of the poles that marked the processional line that went up towards the monument before it started getting all those stones from the Welsh hills, and it became the larger, more famous structure that we know. So there was a drone that actually started looking at markings from the ground that a ground archaeologist just couldn't do. So they have their good side, and also recently in disaster evaluation when there are earthquakes. So they're good in many ways as well.
And we had another very interesting question from James. He said that here in the States there's been an increase in UFO-related programming, which is quite right. It's really very much so on the upswing. And he was wondering if that's also the case in the UK.
Well, yes, indeed, because I mean the Discovery channels that we get here, sometimes we get ones that focus on UK cases, and all of the channels that deal with that side of things. In terms of the UK standard networks, which are what you'd call probably the BBC two main channels that before we started having digital ones, the main ones that people still refer to as a starting point, which are BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, and Channel 4. They're quite thin on the ground with the documentaries, but we've also got a new satellite channel on the Sky network, which I think you can log on to the web and get to it on the website on pay per view, and that's Edge Media, EDGE and then Media, and they do a lot of programs on the UFO phenomenon, related to and related paranormal subjects, but only available on the satellite.
It's interesting stuff. Kate Valentine here. I'm speaking to Matt Lyons. He's the president of the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA. We are on 1160 WVNJ, and you can post your thoughts or questions right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Well, it seems like all this disclosure, all this media attention, I think the hope here is that eventually some sort of authoritative disclosure will come around. James Alexander said that there's no need for, or John Alexander, there's no need for disclosure. The UFOs are here. They're not trying to hide their presence. They do whatever they want to do, fly wherever they want to fly. But until someone in an authority figure comes out and recognizes them, there will not be true disclosure. And I was wondering, how the UK people feel about that.
I think the same sort of frustration that with a lot of people have seen as quite iconic, the MOD desk closing, because it does feel a little as if you're a little bit disconnected from something part of the government structure, of which the MOD is part of the whole civil service and government of the UK. It just seems to be one step further away. But of course, you can still write in, but there's just not a dedicated desk that's doing it full time anymore. But with all of the disclosure, I think a lot of people would like to see that pressure. And I know that there is a disclosure movements that are putting the pressure on to fill in things like online petitions and write to MPs and so on to say, come on, do you know any more? And if you do, please tell. But that is really, I think, the link. In the meantime, I mean, groups like ourselves are just trying to look at the science of the enigma, and whether this happens or not, we're going to keep on looking at why vehicles can get bathed in a red mist and suddenly have their engines stop. How strange lights can appear in the sky and then suddenly disappear. And sometimes, because we are driven very much by science, we're considered to be somehow default by skeptics. We're not. We appreciate, when a case comes along that defies description, it just stays like that. We don't try to explain it away. It gets filed as unsolved until more data comes along that we can solve it definitively. But we won't push for an answer to say, well, we better fit this, bash this square peg into this round hole, because we need to be seen as experts to at the expense of distorting the case and the fact that the anomaly is still strange.
Well, I think that's great, because eventually, if enough data is collecting, it might be that one last piece will fall into place, and then maybe the answer will be there. But we had another question that came in from Dale, and he's saying that he read a book about 15 years ago about the Men in Black. It seemed most of the cases that were reviewed were in England. Are there still a lot of reports on Men in Black appearing after UFO sightings?
They seem to actually, yes, there's quite a big phenomenon in the 90s. In fact, we produced a paper on that to look into that side of things. But it seems to have actually petered out. I can't think of myself personally of any reports of strange looking people acting suspiciously around events disappearing suddenly into thin air, or with car number plates that didn't add up when you put a trace on them, on the national number plate computer, to find, it didn't exist anywhere. Or slightly humanoid appearance, but with that very bad dress sense that they've got, where they've got maybe 1920s tailored suits and trilbies, on a hot sunny day. We haven't had anything like that, but I would be very intrigued if we see another one of those. But it's petered out at the moment.
It would be interesting if they went away at the same time that the Ministry of Defense closed the desk, wouldn't it? That would get the conspiracy theorists flying. Okay. All right.
I'm quite glad that they didn't go inside.
That would be bad. Anyway, we have to take another quick break. Kate Valentine here. I'm speaking to Matt Lyons. He's the president of the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA, if you'd like to look that up. A lot of very fascinating sites on that site. We are on 1160 WVNJ, and if you have questions, comments, or you'd like to post your thoughts, put them right now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. We'll be right back, and we hope to hear from you then.
If you missed part of today's program, or you'd like to hear it again, be sure to subscribe to the Kate Valentine UFO Show podcast. Go to Kate's website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com, and sign up by entering your email address on the homepage. Every week the show will be delivered right to you, so you'll never miss another intriguing, thought-provoking interview with the top names in the UFO field. Sign up today for the Kate Valentine UFO Show podcast at AtlanticCoastUFOs.com.
Hi, welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. Today our guest is Mr. Matt Lyons. He's the president of the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA. That's BUFORA. Please look them up. We welcome you back to this discussion. Please post your thoughts and your opinions on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Anyway, Matt, I'll tell you, I saved the big one for last. On all those MOD releases, what was their take on Rendlesham Forest? Anything at all?
Quite a lot of those, quite a lot of those files were released in the previous batch, which show correspondence going through. But most of that's what people had already known about. But I think with the case, there had been strange events that had been going on before the famous 1980 case with the twin air bases over those two famous nights. For example, we've got vehicle interference reports which cover not just cars but planes, whereby planes suddenly losing power in the area. And of course you have the huge transmitter experimental station that was there as well.
What was that about, Matt? I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what was the transmitter experiment? I was unaware of that.
Well, it's based at Alford Ness, and it's no longer operational now, but it was experiments into long-range listening and tracking during the height of the Cold War, and listening stations. In fact, it went on to have a life as a home of the BBC World Service for a while, because obviously the transmitters were ideal for broadcasting on the long wave, and so but it's now pretty much defunct and just used by completely different civilian organisations now. But that was all to do with radar tracking experiments, and some people theorise that the huge amount of power that was being used in some cases was interfering with aerial traffic, but that obviously, I mean, I think that will always remain quite classified, because it was very much using a huge amount of power to make that happen. But strange things happening before. I mean, two researchers, Dot Street and Brenda Butler, before Sky Crash got written, they had experiences and collected quite a lot of events of strange orbs in the forest and odd things happening. And many would argue that the airbase just happened to be at a peak, that it just happened to be built there and exists on something that may have actually arrived and decided to be there, whether that had been there or not. In terms of the strange events and the lights in the sky that were seen on separate nights, and of course the craft landing. Now, whether that was set off by any experimentation on the ground, that it opened up perhaps dimensional portals and EM fields that allowed something to come through, that's one theory that's put around by some people. But there's definitely weird things happening, and I certainly wouldn't say I was a skeptic, because there was just been too many pictures. I mean, I spoke at the 2011 conference, and there was an awful lot of stuff on display there showing odd orbs and images that were going on years and years after the famous event. And in fact, a few hours before I was due to speak at that conference, I took a picture of what I hope was a microlight. It looked very anomalous, and it only appeared for a few seconds. And there wasn't enough time to actually develop it, because I had to walk out of the forest, and I was at Woodbridge, which neighbours on the forest, and we got it home and developed this and downloaded the image. And you've got a UFO image there that we can't actually solve, because we kept on looking, is this an insect that just came across? And you can actually have a look at that on the article site on the website. And it's classic sort of dome shaped. It's a shadowy thing. You can't see anything inside other than the dark outline, but there seems to be like an energy field distortion on the top of it, and we can't draw a conclusion to that one. So I hadn't seen a UFO before at this point, and there I am, about to speak at the conference of 2011 at Rendlesham at Woodbridge, and then for the first time I actually see one with my own eyes, rather than just investigate reports that come in from witnesses.
Wow, that's it's almost like it came there just to say hi to you. Whoa.
It could be.
You never know. We had some really interesting questions come in too, and I'd love to go on and Rendlesham, but these are interesting. Doug wrote in to say, how common are abduction cases in Great Britain? We seem to get an awful lot here in the States. Or are you not really looking into that?
Well, no, we do actually look into the abduction cases. There are some groups that operate specifically for this, but very much they, because of the imagery that they feel that the witnesses have experienced, they've got classic greys and also experiences into in and outside of craft and sense of motion, and also repeat visits. It's a very, very hot subject, this, because obviously we tend to look at the possibility of other things that, such as sleep disturbances and all the medical things that can cause such night terrors and distortion, and also things like sleep paralysis, when somebody doesn't realise that they're actually asleep and thinks that they've been awake. And then you get missing time segments, but also, I mean, there are night terrors and so on that can manifest themselves, and it's a very, very hot and controversial area because, of course, many people that suffered from, say, half a century ago, before the UFO phenomenon really took off, suffered a lot of these images, would perhaps have had maybe demonic creatures or something. But we have to be very, very careful, I think, that with all the sublime images that come through from so many television programs on the subject, that if somebody's going to have any lucid dreaming, now the imps and the goblins and the scary horror movies of earlier times and earlier decades, and reading a horror novel by Edgar Allan Poe or something, have been taken over by images that the brain's playing, having fun with in the subconscious, that have now got aliens there. But I do also believe that, you know, there are cases whereby it points all towards an abduction scenario, and we always believe the witness on their own merit and their own words. We believe what they have felt and they sense. That is not in doubt at all.
Right. Well, we had another question that came in from Earl, which I find pretty intriguing. He was wondering if there have been any reports of UAP activity at or near CERN, where the Large Hadron Collider lives. And there were some reports coming out that they were actually going to create a black hole, a mini black hole, and the whole planet would get sucked into it. I don't know how true or untrue that was, but have there been any reports that you're aware of over CERN?
Nothing so far, no. Okay. But the person to ask if there have been any anomalies around there would be probably Klaus Van and at AFU and UFOs Sweden. But he would also be able to tell you about some anomalies with ghost rockets, which is doing a presentation on our 50th anniversary conference this year in September, and he's doing a whole presentation on ghost rockets that defy description, of which there seemed to be no military generation for them. Because there was a very famous picture last year, I think, of a very sort of Catherine wheel type image in the sky that was captured by many.
Are there still reports of these ghost rockets?
I think the last one was, I think, in the last 18 months or so, but
really?
We've yet to see one go. I think that's been definitive as not seen to have a generation source. Huh. So they have it.
Now, what is this 50th anniversary that you mentioned?
Well, we were established in 1962,
okay.
And we're now going to be on exactly the day that we formed, on the 22nd of September this year. We're holding a conference in London. We just couldn't get the original venue because the library wasn't going to open on the Sunday, so it's the King's Cross Hotel in the UK, and we've got some very good speakers such as Jenny Randalls is going to be there. Our president, the founding president, Lionel Beer, will be speaking there, and also Spain UFO research with Vicente Ballestolmas, and he's going to be coming over to discuss a photographic project which you may be interested in if you type in PhotoCat, FOTOCAT. Okay. That's PhotoCat project. That's also another person that's cataloguing data just on photographs in all different countries internationally. So there are people out there actually collating this data, of which we're working with, to create a bigger whole information data point. So all of this data from all of these groups are either still running or maybe defunct, or researchers thinking, maybe I've been researching UFOs for 30 years, but I've stopped now. Where can I send all my data? Yeah. These collection points are for them to collate that. And of course, it's a library for everybody to access. It's all completely open. So anybody that wants to do any further research in the US and having difficulty getting hold of maybe some European cases to link in with US data, if you contact them, they'll be more than happy to help.
And what's that contact again for the audience? AFU?
That's afu.se.
Okay. Very good. And what was the date of your conference again? December 22nd?
Oh, that's September the 22nd
September
and the 23rd.
Okay, that'd be good.
Weekend.
I hope someone, has the opportunity to go over and visit you. That would be great. That would be phenomenal. It sounds terrific. Are you going to have like a proceedings type thing that would be up for sale from that?
Well, what we're basically going to do is we just have the speakers and just have a celebratory evening meal, and with the ticket holders, we've got a bookstall there that is specialising in lots of books, which is one of the few chances you get to come across a mobile shop, if you like, that does nothing but UFO books, and also we have some past members speaking with us as well. So just over the whole weekend, and just a celebratory evening meal. And then on Monday it'll be back to witness reports that come in.
Okay, well, good luck with it, Matt. We came to the end of the hour way too soon as usual. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here again.
Thank you.
Keep us up to date on all the happenings in the UK, and we'll be standing by to see if there are any flybys over the Olympics. I hope for your sake there are. Thanks as always to the technical expertise of both Bill and Dave. My apologies to Dave for any gray hairs. And, of course, a big thank you to our sponsors. As always, the biggest thanks goes to you, our listeners. Please don't forget, sign up for the Still Free podcast so that we can keep our numbers up. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next Friday at 1 when our guest will be Nick Redfern coming back for his book, Keep Out. Until then, don't forget to keep your eye on the sky. Bye.